Hello, my name is David Davtyan and I am a second-year master's student at the Faculty of History of Yerevan State University. After February 24th of the year 2022, the beginning of the war between my country and Russia, I began researching the issue of the participation of the Armenian diaspora of Ukraine during the resistance to Russian military aggression. I am half Armenian, my father is Armenian, half Ukrainian. So this topic became interesting for me both emotionally and scientifically for conducting my scientific research. Therefore, the military invasion of the Russian Federation on the territory of Ukraine, which took place on the February 24th, was not some involuntary decision of the President of Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. In fact, this conflict has a certain background. It is worth nothing that the Russian-Ukrainian conflict originated at the beginning of 2014, when mass protests in Kiev, better known as the Revolution of Dignity, ended with the removal from power of the pro-Russian president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, who declared his intention to sign an association agreement with the European Union. However, under the influence of Russia, refused these intentions. In order to justify the invasion of Ukraine and the change of power to a pro-Russian one, Putin's Russia launched a wide-ranging propaganda campaign. The main thesis of Russia was that Nazism, supported by the West, is allegedly ruling Ukraine, and there is a genocide of Russians, whom Russia must save. Playing on political instability in Ukraine, Russia annexed the Ukrainian peninsula of Crimea and organized a separatist movement in the eastern part of Ukraine, deploying its agents, troops, and weapons in the Donbass. Using its puppets, bribery, and political influence in the West, Russia, under the threat of escalation of hostilities, imposed the controversial Minsk agreements on Ukraine, the violation of which is constantly accused Ukraine of ignoring the not fulfillment of them by the terrorist groups on Donbass. On February 21 of year 2022, Russia officially recognized two self-proclaimed quasi-states in eastern Ukraine, the Donetsk People Republic and the Luhansk People Republic, as eastern independent states and openly deployed additional troops in the Donbass, which was interpreted as Russia's withdrawal from the Minsk Protocol. On February 22, Putin announced that the Minsk agreements are no longer valid. On the same day, the Federation Council anonymously approved that the use of military force in these territories. On February 24, 2022, shortly before 5 a.m. Ukrainian time, Vladimir Putin announced that they had decided to launch a military operation in eastern Ukraine. A few minutes after the declaration of war, Russia launched cruise and ballistic missiles at airfields, military headquarters and military warehouse in Kyiv, Kharkiv, Ivano-Frankivsk, Dnipro and Vasilkovo. There were explosions in Kyiv, Kharkiv, Odessa and Donbass. This is how the Russian-Ukrainian war of 2022 began. From the very first day, the Armenians of Ukraine began to help the Ukrainian people in the fight against the Russian invasion, both in their public statement and in other ways, humanitarian aid, money, and fighting in the ranks of armed forces and territorial defense. Already on February 28, the Union of Armenians of Ukraine issued the following statement in which it supported the Ukrainian government and people and condemned Russian military invasion. We, citizens of Ukraine, have been living on this land since the 10th century. The Armenian diaspora has always played a significant role in the establishment of an independent state. This land is our homeland. We, the Armenians of Ukraine, stand against the military aggression of the Russian Federation in our country and condemn the occupation that continues to this day. Now we are side by side with the Ukrainian people protecting our cities, homes, and relatives. On March 9, the head of the Union of Armenians of Ukraine, Vilen Shatvoroyan, made a video address in which he expressed the position of Armenians thoughts Ukraine. This position is the support of Ukraine and the Ukrainian people in the war against Russia. The Union of Armenians of Ukraine openly represents the opinion of our compatriots, who know from personal experience the horrors of war, and we oppose the aggression of the Russian Federation in relation to Ukraine. Our position is open and depends only on the will of our competitors, represented by the heads of Armenian communities. We are for the preservation of the Ukrainian territory, on which the Armenian people have lived for more than 1,000 years, and which we consider our homeland. From the first days of the war, Armenians and citizens of the countries participating in the conflict expressed radically different positions regarding the events that began in February. In the Union of Armenians of Ukraine expressed full support for Ukraine and the Ukrainian people in the fight against the military invasion of the Russian Federation. The Union of Armenians of Russia, on the contrary, acted as an ally of the Russian Federation in this war against Ukraine. Therefore, the approach to humanitarian aid to the Ukrainian population affected by the war in these two Armenian communities is also radically different. If we are talking about the Armenian community of Ukraine, it is worth noting that from the first days of the Syria war, all original communities of the Ukrainian diaspora in Ukraine expressed their position that the Armenians would help Ukraine and the Ukrainian people in this war against Russia. Later, an official statement was made from the head of TSU, William Shatforyan. Also, from the very first day, humanitarian assistance began to be provided to Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian army. On February 28, the Armenian community in Zaporozhye began to help with the construction of defensive structures in the city. On the same day, the Armenians of Volyn, using their own equipment, took part in the construction of barricades near Lutsk. In Kavoy Rock, the Armenians of Ukraine collected non-food items of prime necessity. Also, the Armenian community of the city Lutsk donated more than 60,000 hryvnias collected for the construction of a church for the needs of military forces of Ukraine. Tigran Mkrtchyan, head of the Union of Armenians of the Kherson region, took more than 200 children and women out of hotspots in 2 days. In Vinnytsia, Armenians prepare food for refugees. In the city of Zhytomyr, Armenians supply food to defenders and civilians. On the March 4th, the Armenians of Chernihiv provided food for